All right, happy Monday to everybody. Today we are going to begin solving proportions. On Friday, we determined whether or not two ratios formed the proportions. We'll talk about that in just a second. You will notice that you have 5 new IXL skills that are due next Sunday. Hopefully, you submitted last week's 5. They were all J1s as well. So if you didn't do that, make sure you get that done. You'll also notice that assignment number 45, the Big Ideas assignment from Thursday and Friday, was also due today. So make sure that you have submitted your work page as well as your score. So if you recall, so here are a couple of examples that seem to be troubles for some students. So we're going to quickly go through those, and you're going to want to have a calculator handy on our notes today. And remember, a rate has 2 different units. And when we talk about a unit rate, we want the denominator to become 1. And so you simply just divide these 2 amounts. And so when you divide that, you get 0.75, and it would be pints per gallon. And they did the label for you. So 64%, at least one of the classes, that was what their score was. So I'm not quite sure where you went wrong with that. Possibly a decimal point, possibly flipping it around and typing in the wrong number first. This one, 55% in one class missed it. And what I want you to notice is they wrote these ratios horizontally. And what I would prefer is that you guys go ahead and write them vertically. Now, as fractions. And then we go through, and the best route probably is for you to go ahead and do Jimmy Neutron. And so you type in 3.5 times 8, and you get 28 here. And then you go this direction, and you get 28 here, and they're equal, so therefore it's a yes. I would assume that since there was 55%, I would venture to guess that there were quite a few students that ended up just guessing on it. But anytime you have it, write it as a ratio, write them as 2 fractions. You can see that quite a few people missed this one. This one would be fairly easy to simplify. So this is already simplified. This I could divide by 2, and that's going to give me 2 to 5. So those are equal. And these I can divide by 3, and this would give me 6 divided by 3 is 2, and 15 divided by 3 is 5. And you can see that all of them equal 2 to 5. And so that's why it's a yes. Now in this one, it's also a yes. Harder to simplify because you're dealing with fractions. But if I did this cross product right here, that would give me 2. If I did this cross product right here, I'd have 2. I can't just do those 2. If I do this cross product, I'd get 6, and if I do this cross product, I also get 6. So you can see that no matter what your cross products are, they're still going to be equal. So those seem to be a couple of the trouble ones. And so today we're going to begin day 1 of solving proportions. This is from your textbook, chapter 5, lesson 4. And we're just going to focus on only solving proportions, not worrying about word problems today. And then next week we'll talk, or Thursday, Friday this week, we'll talk about story problems with these. Remember, you can pause. So if you're doing this on notebook paper, you should head your paper right now with this title. Pause if you need, if I'm going too fast. Make sure you have a calculator handy. Get these examples down as well. So this is a review of yesterday, or from last week. There are 3 ways that we talked about to determine whether or not 2 ratios form a proportion. We could simplify both ratios, like we did on that ratio table. We can do common multiplier, which is basically what you do when you get a common denominator, and then Jimmy Neutron, which is cross products. Okay, today we're going to solve proportions to find the missing value. We will be finding the value that makes the proportion true. All right, and so our steps are, this is how I always like to do this on each and every one of these. I believe these are not on your notes. This part may not be in your notes. But number 1, check to see if there's a common multiplier. Often that is one of the fastest, easiest way to solve the proportion. If not, you're going to do your cross products, which we call Jimmy Neutron. So first 2 examples, and apparently I don't have equal signs again with the wonderful computer. Now, the difference is between Thursday and Friday and today is you are being told that these do form a proportion. So you know that they're supposed to be equal to each other. Now, I need to get to Z, so I'm going to draw my arrow this way. And so common multiplier, instead of multiplying, you can also divide. And so this I could see is 36 divided by 3 would give me 12. So if I wrote divide by 3 here, it'd be just like simplifying a fraction. So Z would equal 7. And so that's one of the fastest, easiest ways to do these. If I look at example 2, this is using common multiplier. So we're going to check, can I think of something? 10 times what gives me 40? Well, 10 times 4, that's nice and pretty. And 8 times 4 would be 32. So n is equal to 32. That is the value that makes this proportion true. So 32 to 40 is the same as 8 to 10. If we were to simplify those, we'd see that they both would simplify down to 4 to 5. Okay, so that's method 1. Now, a lot of you are not going to do that method at all on any of your homework because you're going to like method 2 that much more, which is cross products. And so you guys have this on your paper. There's a little box that shows you these steps. So we are going to set up the two ratios and use the cross products, and we're going to solve the equation then. So what you're going to do is you're going to build your castle wall, just like we're dealing with Elsa. You're creating an equation. You're going to draw your loops and your arrows up and over. You're going to write the equation that is created by the cross products, and then you're going to solve the one-step equation. So as we look at this first one, now these are not terribly big, ugly numbers, so we're going to got our equal sign here. So step 1, you're going to build your castle wall. I'm going to build my castle wall on both of these. All right. Step 2, we're going to do our cross products. So in this loop, we have 2 times x, which we just write as 2x. And in this loop, we have 7 times 5. Now, you're going to use your calculator if you need to, but you can go ahead. You don't have to show me. By drawing that loop, you're showing me that you multiply those. Now, we just have a basic one-step equation. There's Elsa. Elsa wants to be all by herself, so we're going to isolate Elsa by dividing by 2. So we're going to cross that off. And x is going to be equal to, so you go ahead and take your calculator and you do your 35 divided by 2, and you get your 17.5. And so the value that makes it true is x is 17.5. So as we look at the next one, we can draw our loops. We take our calculator, and you don't need to write out all this multiplication. That's why you're allowed to use a calculator. So you do 2.5 times 22, and you get 55. And sometimes these work out nice and pretty, and sometimes they work out to be ugly decimals, but that's what's nice because you have a calculator. In math, everything doesn't always work out nice and pretty. So in the second loop, you had 5x. Now, x is on the right-hand side. It doesn't really matter. We're going to divide both sides by 5 to get x all by itself, and you really should be able to divide that in your head. So 55 divided by 5 is 11. So x would equal 11 in this case. All right, so that's Jimmy Neutron, and we're going to keep going with that and practice some more. So we can use any method. Now, you can use Jimmy Neutron on every single question if you prefer. However, like on this question, on these two questions, I would, quite honestly, I would hopefully recognize that this is times 4, and this is times 4 then. So then D would have to equal 32, all right? Now, I'm going to show you real quick that cross products obviously still works. So if you wanted to do cross products on every single question, you can do that. And so I'd have 5 times D here, and then I'd have 8 times 2 is 16, and 160. I would divide by 5, and that would mean D would equal 32 when you take your calculator and do 160 divided by 5. As we look at the next one, once again, if you recognize this really quick and easy, I can divide this by 3, which means I could divide this by 3, and so x would equal 7. However, if that is not your preferred route, you can go ahead and do your Jimmy Neutron here, and you would have 168 equals, and then you go this way, and you have 24x. You're going to divide both sides by 24, and you get x, and you take your calculator, and you go 168 divided by 24, and you're going to get x equals 7. So what you're going to see is either way works. And so some of you, it's the same thing. You're going to always multiply, and your second step is going to be to divide each and every time, okay? So on this one, I look for a common multiplier. This time, if I look at these two, there's nothing that, nothing pretty at least. Okay, we could have an ugly decimal number, but we're not going to worry about that. So now we're going to just take our calculator and we're going to go ahead and do our cross product. So in this loop, we have 16k, and in this loop, we have 48. I'm going to divide both sides by 16. And what you have to understand is it's not always going to work out to be some nice pretty number. And so you get k equals 3 this time. And so we go ahead and plug that back in. And if you guys think about it, if you think logically about this one's pretty quick and easy to see. If you see the starting ratio of 8 to 16, that would simplify down to 1/2, okay? And so what would have to be on for k that would make it equal to 1/2? Well, it would have to be 3 to 6, which would equal 1/2. So you can see that our answer makes sense in this case. All right, so now we're going to throw a couple of challenge questions at you just to get you going or thinking about some things. Now, this one, lots of you freak out because you see all sorts of fractions. Now, your homework actually doesn't have any of these examples in it, but we will eventually get to some more of these. So this is 2/3 x in this case equals. Now, you might actually have to do some multiplying out on the side here. So you have 4/5 times 1/3, and you look, can I simplify diagonally? No. And so I just multiply and I get 4/15. And if you recall, if you want to clear a fraction, so if I have a fraction coefficient like 2/3, to get rid of that, I'm going to flip and multiply because that's the same as dividing. And so we're going to flip and multiply, and you'll notice those 3's would simplify and become 1. The 2's simplify and become 1, and you're left with x over here. And now I can try to simplify. So I look here and I see a 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. I see 3 and 15. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 15 divided by 3 is 5. Now I get to multiply across, and I get 2 times 1 is 2, and 5 times 1 is 5. And so the answer would be 2 to 5 for our answer. All right, as we look at the next one, this one also gets a little bit tricky, but it's actually fairly easy once you get rolling with it. So once again, we're going to do our cross product. So this cross product is super easy. So you have 5 times 8 is 40. Now, this is multiplication. So really what it means is 2 times 4x. Well, that's all multiplication. So you're just going to end up multiplying the 2 times 4, which is 8x. Okay, now we're going to divide both sides by 8, and that's going to leave us x equals 5. Now on this one, we can double check it. We can put it back in. So if you look, 4 times 5 is 20, and so it'd be 20 to 8. And if you were to simplify 20 to 8, you can divide both by 4, and you get 5 to 2. So you can see that it works. So you can check these answers. Sometimes it's easier than other problems on certain questions. All right, this final question. So as you can see, our notes are pretty quick. So if you needed to pause or anything else, this is putting it all together, going back to our algebra skills from our last chapter. Now, this is the one that's a little bit harder. So I'm going to deal with that in a second. This is the easy one. So if we did 4 times 11, we're going to get 44. That's nice and neat. Now, this, on the other hand, is 8. Now, it's not just times the y. It's times the y plus 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to put parentheses around that. So it is the 8 times the whole denominator, y plus 2. Now that I wrote it that way, hopefully you recognize that you would now need to distribute. And so we're going to put it all together, what we did in last chapter. And so we get 8y plus, and 8 times 2 is 16 equals 44. And then we're going to go back and we're going to undo our addition and subtraction first. This is a basic 2-step equation. Those would simplify out. You're left with 8y equals, and over here I'm going to, since I've got everything lined up pretty, I get 8 and I believe that's 28. So it's not always going to be beautiful and pretty. So we're going to divide both sides by 8 this time, and you're going to be left with y equals, and if I were to, now you can just take, at this point, you guys can take your calculator and you can go 28 divided by 8, and you're going to get your 3.5, okay? Or you guys could have said, well, 28 goes into, or 8 goes into 28 3 times, which is 24, and you'd have 4 left over, which is the same as 3.5, okay? Whoops, 3.5. So either way is acceptable, okay? Now, as we continue, all right, your homework is that is page 11 and 12 in your packet. If you don't have a copy of that, then obviously you can, well, you could freeze this screen and just copy it from here. You can go to Canvas and pull it up on modules and write it on notebook paper. But the big idea here is that you must show all your work, okay? You've got to show your work. So I want to see that nice, neat Jimmy Neutron on every question. Quite honestly, you guys should have plenty of time to get your homework done. And so utilize your time. Yes, I'm not there for you to make sure you're on task. So make sure you get it done. It was due on Wednesday for you. And if you finish early, start knocking out your IXL this week so you can get ahead of the game. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, and I'll talk to you soon.